this series, Afterlife, we're talking about Easter, and today is Easter Sunday, what many people would consider the biggest day ever for followers of Jesus because it's the day we celebrate Jesus' resurrection. When he came back to life from the dead, he showed the world that he conquered death and that he's bigger and better than we could ever possibly imagine. More specifically, we're talking about people who encountered Jesus after his resurrection and had a different life after they saw him. Their afterlife changed so much while they were still here on earth. So today, we're going to be talking about a woman named Mary and her experience with Jesus before and after the resurrection. But before we do, let's start with a little context. The Bible talks about a handful of different women named Mary. There's Mary, who was the mother of Jesus. Then Jesus was dying on the cross. There was two other Marys that were mentioned as well. One of them was named Mary Magdalene. The truth is, there's a lot we don't know about Mary Magdalene. But one thing we know for sure is that she was a committed follower of Jesus. In fact, her name is mentioned more than any other woman who wasn't in Jesus' family. The Gospels mention her 12 different times. Luke tells us that she traveled with Jesus and helped support the ministry financially. He also mentions that Mary had 7 demons driven out of her. Yes, sounds crazy, but it basically means that she was an outcast before Jesus healed her. So I think we can safely say that Mary understood what it meant to be ignored and overlooked. But here's why we're talking about her today. All 4 Gospels record that Mary Magdalene was there when Jesus was put on the cross. 3 of the 4 Gospels say she was there at Jesus' burial, and all 4 say that she was the first to see Jesus resurrected. The disciples get a lot of credit for being Jesus' most loyal followers, but there was no other disciple around in the big moments of Easter as much as Mary was. And on that day where we celebrate Jesus coming back from the dead, we should pay attention to one of the people who knew him best. But she doesn't get a lot of attention. In a lot of ways, she lived on the sidelines. If you don't pay attention to what you're reading, it just sounds like a bunch of women named Mary that no one can keep track of. You definitely don't get the same sense she was a major player in the story. But she was. The Gospel of John, which was written by another one of Jesus' disciples, records that while it was still dark, Mary got up and went to the tomb. But when she got there, the stone had been placed in front of the tomb and was gone. Mary didn't immediately think, of course, he's gone. Jesus is alive. No, she assumed someone messed with the grave and took his body. She went straight to Peter and another disciple to tell them. They all ran to the tomb. Sure enough, Mary was right. The stone was gone. The body was gone. All that was left was Jesus' grave clothes. The other disciples left to go tell the others, but Mary stayed there where she was, right by the tomb. As if sadness of losing a friend wasn't enough, now there was added trauma of his body being taken or moved. John writes this scenario like this. So on the day Jesus defeats death, proving God's love is bigger and stronger than anything else, he makes sure Mary was there to see it. And this was a big deal because in the first century when Jesus lived, a woman was not seen as a reliable witness. She couldn't testify in court. Her word was not to be trusted over a man's. And yet, over and over again in the Gospels, at the cross, at the tomb, and on Easter morning, it was a woman who saw Jesus first, who recognized him, and who was given the job of telling the others. When the rest of the world saw women as unreliable, inferior, and untrustworthy, Jesus saw something different. He valued and elevated them, even when the rest of the world didn't. Jesus made the decision to trust Mary with his resurrection. He knew Mary and called her by name. He chose her to be the first person to share the good news, while others made assumptions about Mary because of her gender, her past, or anything else that would have written her out of the story. Jesus wrote her in as a major character. Jesus made sure that Mary knew that she had value and her word could be trusted. When the world was sending Mary one message, Jesus sent another. And if Mary wondered who she could believe, the resurrection of Jesus gave Jesus all the credibility in the world. So no matter what messages others have been giving Mary, no matter what messages we may be getting because of the resurrection, we can take that Jesus says seriously and Jesus said that Mary was important, and because of this, because of the resurrection, Mary knew that she mattered. Today we celebrate something that happened 2,000 years ago, a day that changed the world. But on the first Easter morning, it changed the lives of the people who knew Jesus best, most of all, because now everything Jesus said meant more than it did before. Easter morning, Jesus coming back from the dead proved Jesus is who he says he was, and that his words mattered. This morning, he spoke words that tell us all about Mary's value and worth in a culture where Mary would have heard again and again that she wasn't enough, she didn't have credibility, and that she should stay on the edges where she belonged. Jesus made sure the message she got from him was different, and the same is true for you and me. See, just like Mary mattered to Jesus, so do you. When he said her name, he said your name too. He said the name of the people who feel overlooked, unseen, or forgotten. He said the name of the people who feel like our part in this story doesn't matter. But because of Easter, because of the resurrection, Mary knew that Jesus and what he said could be taken seriously. She experienced his words firsthand and what he did firsthand. Jesus coming back to life because Mary carried the message back to Jesus' followers is such a huge deal. This Easter, that's the message I want you to take with you. You are seen, you are known, loved, and important because Jesus says so. And if we wonder if we can take Jesus seriously, Easter Sunday is a reminder that we can. He defeated death. We can trust what he says. And Jesus says, Mary mattered, you mattered, and the person next to you matters. When we live like that's true, our lives look different. I want you to think about how you treat yourself and others. Ask yourself some questions. Do you believe that you matter? Do you treat yourself like you matter? Do you allow other people to treat you as if you don't matter? Do you treat others like they don't matter? Are there people you treat like they matter more? Are there people you treat like they don't matter at all? What would it look like to start treating yourself and others like Jesus does, like they matter, starting today? What would change in your life if you really believed that you matter to God, and because of that, the people around you matter as well? Would you be more confident? Would you be more intentional in your relationships? Would you care less about what other people say about you? Because of the resurrection, Mary knew that she mattered and her afterlife looked different. But make sure you get this. Because of the resurrection, you know that you matter too.